Welcome to Campus Conversations for Shawnee Community College. This is our podcast network, and this is my first one of the fall semester. And so my guest today is Dr. John Green, the new superintendent, and I use that word new loosely, but he's the new superintendent at Goreville Community Schools. Welcome to the show, Mr. Green. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dr. Taylor.
Well, John, we have to get started. I remember the first time I met you. It was on St. Patrick's Day, and you were a superintendent at Meridian at that point. And I remember seeing you come through the hall, and you're dressed like a leprechaun.
Very true.
And today you've got a fine suit on that's very, I guess, seasonal, appropriate for the season. But really, what I wanted to ask you, kind of get started, is. You're also a referee too, right?
Yes.
I've seen you at some of our games. You do a lot of our games. You make mostly good calls.
That's what they all say.
Yeah. But I got to ask, does every superintendent referee's career start with the St. Patrick's Day debut in full leprechaun gear?
No, not necessarily. It doesn't usually start that way. That's something I think probably about, 15 years ago or so, I decided to, when it became kind of a holiday. I mean, schools all have theme weeks, different stuff like that, and try to participate, try to show the kids, show the staff that the superintendent's willing to do it. Then hopefully they're willing to try to build that school spirit, and the kids love it. That's the one thing I found out over the years. And now my wife, she's really into it. So like last week was homecoming week, so I went from being dressed as Walt Disney on Monday to Axl Rose on Tuesday to Al Bundy on Wednesday. To Thursday, I was a geriatric old man. So I've had more hair in the last week than I've had in about 4 years.
Nice. So did you have the Axl Rose shimmy?
I did have a kilt on, but I did not have a shimmy.
No, okay. We can talk about that later. I can show you some videos. So tell us a little bit about your background, your family, where you're from, and what led you into education.
So I grew up in Lawrenceville, Illinois, which is about probably 2 hours and 45 minutes from here, right across the river from Vincennes, which you would know well. Mm-hmm. Grew up on a farm about 9 miles north of Lawrenceville. Family still owns the farm, still farms to this day. Kind of was told at a very young age. I was the oldest of three. I got a sister who's a year behind me in school, about 2 years younger than me, and then a brother who's 5 years younger than me, and was told from an early age by my parents that education was very important, that I was going to be going to college. That was not a choice or an option. My parents, my dad was a first generation college person. His dad quit school when he was in 8th grade during the Great Depression because he had to go get a job. And my grandmother on that side, she just had a high school education. On the other side of my family, my mom's side, my grandfather, after serving some time in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, he wanted to be an engineer, so he went to Rose-Hulman, mm-hmm. and he got put through by a neighbor. He had a neighbor who paid for his tuition, so he could go. And at that time, he had 2 kids. He had my oldest uncle and my mom, and was married, and so he'd work as a custodian while he wasn't going to class. He went and got his engineering degree, and that became something of a mark. And my dad graduated from U of I in 1974, and so with his agricultural degrees, and early 70s, farming was really going well, and him and my mother got married. I think they dated for a couple weeks, got engaged, and were married 6 months later, and have celebrated. I think they're at number 52 right now. So just a very close, tight-knit family. If as a crow's fly growing up, everybody that lived pretty much within a mile and a half of me was related to me. That was kind of our farm base. And my other grandparents were an hour away, but my parents really made sure we always spent 2 weeks in the summer with them. Mm-hmm. And we'd see them all the time. And so family was a big thing. But the education part kind of came about probably when I was about 12. And by that time I was helping on the farm. And that's really what I wanted to do. But I think it was one day we took a break, and by that time I think I tore the disc up again. And my grandfather and my dad both looked at me and said, "You know what? I know you want to be a farmer, but you you break everything, you can't fix anything, so you're going to have a very short lifespan as a farmer. You might want to think about doing something else. And it just happened to be that time my dad was on the school board. I was active in sports and also in music and theater and stuff, and school was a lot of fun. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually went to SIU to be a radio TV broadcaster, and that lasted about 5 months when they told me how much I was going to make when I got out of school, lugging a camera around on Friday nights and videotaping basketball games. I'm like, I don't think I can live off that. So I said, well, I think I'll be a teacher. You know, $20,000 a year at that time.
Yeah, that's so much better.
So much better. And so I did that. Plus, I wanted to be involved with athletics and coach. And so got involved at SIU at the rec center. Was part of intramurals, refereeing there. Was refereeing junior high basketball on the side. Ran the rec center from a student supervisor perspective for about 4 years. Started coaching basketball while I was there. Started at Anna Jonesboro as a JV boys coach 1 year. The next year I was at Carterville as a fresh off, and then I graduated and went to Fairfield to start my teaching career for 2 years. So
Fairfield High School?
Yep.
The Mules?
The Mules, yes. Where, you know, at that day and age, there was probably 50, 60, 70 candidates for a social studies job in 1998. And they said, well, here's the things. You're going to have to be the freshman football coach, the freshman class sponsor, JV boys basketball coach, and you have 6 preps. And I said, I'm good. Let's go.
Let's rock. So did you go to IECC at any time, being from Lawrenceville?
No, I actually, after my freshman year at SIU, I played 3 sports in high school. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't going to be good enough to play, but I had the opportunity to go walk on at Lincoln Trail. Mm-hmm. And I kind of had an appetite. Plus, you know, when I graduated high school, I think I weighed 142 pounds. And so I could get thrown around like a rag doll pretty easily. By that time, after my freshman year, I was probably 170. Mm. And I could get around pretty good. So I'm like, I think I can play now a little bit. Went home that summer. And then I started kind of weighing the options, and I said, I'm going back. So I went back to SIU and finished. Now, my dad, him and my aunt both went to Vincennes and then went to U of I. My brother went to Wabash and then SIU. My sister went to Vincennes and then SIU. So it runs pretty deep in my family. I'm the only one that kind of skipped it. I'm the one that broke everything because I didn't go to U of I and I didn't go to JUCO. So,
and you broke the disc in the field.
Yes. Well, lots of other things. You name it, I probably broke it.
So I'm a little older than you, but I can't remember the names. Is it Jay Scheidler?
Yes.
And then Marty Simmons?
Yes.
Is that your dad's era?
So Jay graduated in 76. I'd have been a year old. Marty, though, was 82, 83 when they went back-to-back, went 68-0. I was lucky enough that my parents took us to all those. So I was in Champaign for the state championships, waiting in line after the regionals, waiting in line after the sectionals at the school all night to get tickets for the next game. That's just kind of where the passion started.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I've been fortunate enough to see that, and I'm also fortunate enough to know all those guys very well, actually.
I mean, people that are, unless you're my age, don't remember it, but Lawrenceville was a powerhouse back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, they were crazy good.
Yeah, so the ironic thing, after 83, Coach Felling, he retired. And consequently, at that same time when the refinery closed in Lawrenceville. And then about 88, 89, when I was an 8th grade freshman year, it reopened. And we had people move in, and then starting with my class of 93, for the next about 5 years, we were really good again. My brother actually went back to state in 96, and then it closed down again. They've actually, this year, they're ranked number 1 or number 2 in Class 1A. And they've got a really, really good team. They had a really good team last year, got upset in the sectionals, I believe. So they're trying to bring it back. But it's now they're 1A. They've never been 1A. Last year they were 2A. When I was in school, there was 500 kids in the school. When my dad was in school, there were 750, 800. And now they're less than 300.
When I went to high school in Illinois, there was only 2 classes, 1A and 2A. Everybody was in one of those. So.
Same here.
So The reason I was, did you play basketball then in school?
Yeah, I played
You said three
basketball,
sports?
football, baseball,
Yeah.
and then my senior year, I actually, and then I played golf a little bit too. So.
All right. You're stepping into a leadership role at Goreville High School after a long tenured superintendent, Dr. Webb. What made you decide to keep calling fouls on that court and with that board? And what excites you most about this new position for you?
Well, it's a great opportunity. It's where I live. It's where both of my sons are. My youngest is a senior. He'll graduate this year. All of my stepchildren have graduated from there. My wife graduated from there. She teaches there. It's a 1-minute drive. When we got married 8 years ago, we made the decision then that, because at that time I was in Millstadt, had a great job, great place to live, great place to raise kids. But she was from here, and we bought her grandparents' house that sits on 13 acres just on the edge of Goreville, and we made a decision and really felt at that time it was going to be a better fit for my kids as far as the size of the school, because my oldest was an 8th grader at the time, so he was going to be a freshman, and so he'd been going to Belleville West, and he's a 3-sport athlete, but he was not going to be a 3-sport athlete there. And athletics was something that kind of helped him drive him to do well in the classroom as well. And so I really thought he needed that, and it worked out. They've all had great times in school. So, and then in the meantime, I needed to find a job. So I was actually on June, I think 24th, I had accepted a job to be an insurance salesman because I could not find a superintendency. Or at that time, I'd even applied for principal's jobs in this region. Because a lot of times with superintendents, they want you to live in the district. And so I already knew I was going to be living in Goreville when I was out. I mean, Dr. Webb was there. He was going to be there until he retired. So I had to find something where I was going to be able to live there. And there are some superintendents who they'll get an apartment or rent a place, and that's kind of their home during the week. I'm just really not. That's not something that fits me. And so it just happened to be on that day. I accepted it. The next day, I actually had an interview at Meridian for the principal job at the high school. And so I drove down there. I think the interview lasted approximately 16 and a half minutes.
Impressed
and I was one of 3 candidates. And I kind of knew, I thought I probably had the job if I wanted it. And obviously going from where I was at, I knew coming back down south, I was gonna take a pay cut, just different economics, and that's okay. But then I had to also kind of figure out, and I also wasn't too keen on the idea of selling insurance, even though the guy I was going to be working for was a good friend of mine. We coached together, knew each other for a long time, and he's like, "This will be easy. I've got it set up for you." And I'd probably be the one that's like, "You don't really want to do this, and that's probably not going to be good if you're trying to sell something." So I went to that interview, got back on the interstate, which is literally 500 yards from the school, and the phone rings, and it's the board president, and he's like, "Can you turn around and come back?" I'm like, "Well, I'll be back in 20 minutes because I'm on the interstate and I got to drive all the way to Olin." because down there you definitely don't want to take a U-turn in the emergency zone because you're going to get pulled over. And so he's like, "Perfect, fine." So I came back, and he was waiting for me in the parking lot. And at the interview, the superintendent, who I knew at the time, was down there. He was there at the interview. And the board president, "I think we have a surprise for you." And I said, "Well, what's that?" He goes, "I'll just go inside." The vice president goes, "How would you like to be the superintendent?" And I said, "Well, where did he go?" "Oh, he just told us he took another job." I said, "Well, I've got a couple questions, but I think we could probably make it work." And so within a span of 48 hours, I went from not going to be a superintendent selling insurance to possibly going to be a high school principal to 30 minutes later being a superintendent again at Meridian.
That's an interesting story. But it's a Southern Illinois kind of story.
Yes, it is. Every time I tell that, people just kind of, I said, "No, that's true. That's
what
how it happened."
It's what you have to do down there. In order to get good folks to work. I mean, you got to be a lot more flexible, I think, in your hiring practices than you would in, let's say, Belleville or St. Louis or someplace like that. So you've led Meridian, you've led Goreville, 2 distinctly really different, they're both rural districts, but they're distinctly different. How would you say that's shaped your leadership philosophy at all, or to date?
Well, I don't think that my leadership philosophy has really changed. I try to do the same thing. I think what's changed over the years is how I've gone about it. I think early on, when I was first 22 years ago, when I was first a principal at Pinckneyville, I was 29 years old. And I literally got the job the night before the first day of in-service. And I walked in the door the next day, and 2/3 of the people in the room are older than me, a lot more experience than me. And they're like, who's this, young guy? And so I believe you have to listen and build trust. I think that's the biggest key to any time you go into a situation and you can't do anything radical or crazy. Because people are used, every culture has their own uniqueness to it. As you just talked about, they're used to what they do. And so you've got to learn that culture. You've got to kind of understand that. And you have to meet people at their terms and on their ground. I don't like to have meetings in my office. It reminds me of when you're a kid in school and you get called to the principal's office. So I always try to go to them and meet them in their classroom or meet them in their office, because people just generally feel more comfortable with that. And so kind of putting them at ease first and then listening to what they have to say. There's an old saying that 90% of the time people just want you to listen. They don't necessarily want you to make a decision. And out of those conversations, you can start to get the ideas of things that you could look to potentially change or fix, and then come about through a process on how to do that. And so I think that's kind of the way I've tried to do it everywhere I've been. And I think that's been learned from me from a young age. Because my dad's always been in leadership positions, whether it be president of the school board or president of the local farm bureau, to being on the state board for the farm bureau for a number of years, and watching him. And he's a big conversationalist, but he does a lot of listening. And then when I was at Millstadt, I was 40 years old. And by that time, I was 11 years in as administrator with a long time to go. And somebody encouraged me to go to the Illinois Associated Schools Advanced School of Leadership. It's called ISIL. And I went, I'm going to go here. I'm going to learn how to be a better leader. Well, found out real quick, day one, the only way I was going to be a better leader if I took care of myself first. And didn't kind of realize everything that I had going on that was kind of keeping me from being the person I could be and the leader I could be. And during that session, we actually spent a whole day just on what is the different types of listening and what kind of listener are you. And it made me really kind of reflect back that a lot of times I wasn't being an attentive listener. I was listening, but I really wasn't engaged. And that's the key aspect to actually being a great listener, is how engaged you are with the person, and they know that you're actually being sincere about what you are doing. And so that really changed kind of my whole perspective on leadership and life, and really has kind of shaped what I really try to do and be intentional about trying to do every day. And I still catch myself.
Sure, it's hard.
But I think from a leadership aspect, that's probably what I've done the best, which has allowed me to be able to be in very different cultures throughout my leadership career. Because when you go from Pinckneyville to Millstadt to Meridian to Goreville, those are 4 very different types of districts that have some similarities throughout them weaved in there, but they have very different cultural traditions within their own communities, which you've got to understand.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. I mean, in my career, I've transitioned from a president, a small rural, to a large metropolitan college, back to a small rural. But even before that, I was a dean in Decatur, Illinois, and then a dean in southern Wisconsin, a small school. So, I mean, going back and forth, that's really clear. I mean, I think it's pretty universal. Looking and learning about each, even though the tools are the same, the decisions, the ideas that go into decisions, mostly the same oftentimes, but it's the culture and listening to and understanding the needs of those individuals is always what changes. So I think it's pretty similar in higher ed as well. So the idea of listening, what was the adage I heard? It's something to do with, are you listening or are you hearing? And I can't remember which was more engaged. I think the listening's more engaging, but I hear you. But we were doing this, but yeah, that resonates, and it's something probably I could do better even as today.
That's one of the things I talk to a lot to administrators I work with and different things, like, are you really in tune? Are you listening to the people that you're working with? Because you'll find out a lot if you just do that.
Yeah, you're so right about that. That's a great sage advice for those administrators out there that might be thinking about making a jump into a higher position. That is about as strong advice as you can probably give, I think. So, you're transitioning into a new role in a new district, and it comes with challenges and opportunities just like every other thing. And I know that you're just finishing up your first semester, but what's been your priority as you prepare for leading this Goreville schools for the next few years?
So, obviously Goreville's had a lot of successes, but there's always things you can look to improve. And so, I told the board and the stakeholders that, first thing I'm going to do is kind of do a 90-day review and try to meet with as many people as I can and take down notes, what would they like to see improve, what would they like to see change. And that goes across the board, whether it be, the academic side of it, the building structural side of it, routines that we have on a daily basis, those types of things. And so we did that, and when it came back, we've got some building needs. There's been a lot of additions over the years. I mean, it's if you go to Goreville, you could get lost pretty easily if you're not used to it because of the number of additions. And we have a lot of great facilities, but we just have that issue of a lot of things that are aging out. Mm-hmm. And they're not, quote unquote, the sexy things that people would see. We're talking about roofs and HVAC and all those things that when the heat's not working, like some of the classrooms today, guess what? People are not real happy about things.
It's hard to learn when you're cold.
And
it's hard to learn when you're
while we've got temporary heat in those places so that they can continue to do it, that's not nearly as efficient or what you want. And the repair bills are not fun to pay either. And so as you start to weigh that. So right now we're kind of in a phase with the board of going through and weighing the different things that need to be kind of attacked and how we're going to structure that. But then also how we're going to finance that, which you've got to make those working pieces come together. And so that's one of the big things. Obviously, we want to continue. We've been working this semester, actually working with you guys on expanding our dual credit offerings that we are doing for the kids. So giving kids more opportunities, giving kids the right opportunities for what is available in the workforce today, because that's really changed during my career. Obviously, when I first started, 28 years ago, it was, basically college, junior college or bust. People kind of looked down at that time, in my opinion, just knowing what I was directed to do of, trades, military. Military was kind of like, well, if you can't get to college, you can go to the military, then, do that kind of a thing. Or, obviously some kids, that's just what they wanted to do from a family standpoint. Obviously I got, both of my grandparents were in the military. I got a lot of aunts and uncles and different relations, but it really wasn't the kind of the push when you went to the guidance counselor. The push was you're going to go to JUCO or you're going to go 4 year. Now we're in a situation where both of my sons, I've got one who's currently working for a coal mine and trying to get an electrical union, and the other one, when he graduates this year, wants to go into electrical or construction union. And my oldest, he came here actually and played baseball for a couple years, took classes and just kind of figured out classes worked for him. But I think that evolution of where we're seeing things change is also trickling down. And so getting kids exposed to those programs through the relationships with Shawnee College and other things in those trades really can get them started on a really good path really quickly and be a great joint effort. So we're, that's another thing we're really kind of focused on.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, when I grew up, same deal. Nobody cared about the unions, but if I would have joined the IBEW out of school and I had an electrical background and interest in it, I would have been retired and would have earned probably a lot more money than I'm earning right now. Mm-hmm. There's just such a need for the trades and the workers. There's golden opportunities for anybody that wants to move into the workforce right away, that's just willing to serve an apprenticeship and get paid while you're learning. Mm-hmm. So it's an extraordinarily a great opportunity for kids today, or not just kids, adults.
Young adults, adults who've had different careers.
So Goreville is pretty well known for its school spirit and community pride. What stands out about that culture to you?
Well, they're invested in it, and it's not just from. I mean, it's an expectation, and I think that's what really triggers things. And I've been very fortunate, like I said, at Pinckneyville, when I got there's an expectation that boys basketball is going to be good, girls softball. And what I've really tried to do when I was there was expand that to we want all of our programs to be successful. And I don't want those to go down, but I always when I first got to Pinckneyville, I was like, well, 20 miles up the road at Nashville, all of their programs are successful. I mean, that's where and so we were very fortunate during that time. Went to baseball state twice during my time there. Went to basketball state, obviously cheerleading state, softball state. I mean, we our girls basketball team got a lot better. The girls volleyball team's a lot better now. I mean, they've we pushed those things, and I think that, and it's not just the sports side of it, because we're going to have a band concert Wednesday at Goreville, and it'll be packed. And that last week we had a basketball game, and our little Shaker girls were performing. It's jam packed on a Tuesday night, and so it's just expectations. The town expects it. When the kids are growing up, the parents expect them to participate and then follow through. I think the one thing that you see now, which is a great advantage, but it also takes away, and I don't think people thought about this when we first started doing it. You can see every game you want now if you get on YouTube, or we have our Black Cats Network, which is super popular. And unfortunately, some people decide, I can just turn on the Black Cat Network. And I don't have
so
to
they're not showing up?
Mm-hmm. And so we're really trying to turn that around, because the kids need that. I mean, I understand you're supporting them from home or wherever, but something's totally different when you're in the gym. Now, obviously, we get to postseason or a big tournament game, people still turn out. But, those Tuesday nights, now we're having to do kind of special things to get people to come out, because it's a lot easier to sit at home in your lazy boy or on the couch to turn it on the big screen.
Plus, you can have adult beverage.
You do whatever, you can do whatever you want. So, but it's still an expectation.
Sure.
But I also think, it's an expectation from our staff. It's an expectation from our sponsors and our coaches. It's an expectation from our teachers with the kids in the classroom. And that's, when there's expectations, people will rise up. When there's no expectations, people will settle exactly where they're always going to be, because that's what they're just used to. And that kind of goes back when I got to Meridian. I really focus on, here's what people think of you. And here's what I do know, it's not the truth. But we got to show everybody how untruthful it is. So we've got to change the dynamics. We've got to change on how people view us. Because you wonder why so-and-so won't play us, so we won't let us come there, or they look at our test scores and we can't do this. And very proud of the kids and staff that we hired, because when I first got there, we were 15 staff members short the day I got hired for that coming school year. And we started the year 9 short. We had 8 permanent subs. We had permanent subs teaching high school English, high school math, high school science. I mean, every critical thing you could imagine. And we were able to turn that around. And last year when I left, we finally made commendable for the state on our school report card for the first time in the history of the school. But we also, we had a tremendous basketball team, and we had tremendous other activities and programs going on. And to see all those things happen really is what you try to do and make happen in a school. And obviously coming into Goreville, where they would have those expectations, now we just got to take it up another notch, right? So that's kind of where our focus is.
So, have you ever watched Last Chance U?
Oh, yeah.
Netflix. So, I mean, I'm not condoning the coaching practices there by any stretch of the imagination, but it really got me thinking about their pursuit of excellence on the field. Mm-hmm. And the reason students come there is to perform. And the whole idea about what athletics brings to the table as it relates to personal and career development. I mean, when you ask employers, it doesn't matter which sector they're from, nursing, allied health, business, manufacturing, it doesn't matter. They say we want people who work as a team, right? We want people who can solve problems and people who can communicate. And so those are things that you learn to do in athletics. And so as an administrator at a community college who's always been, faculty's always put academics first, mm-hmm. How do we balance putting excellence in athletics without sacrificing excellence in the classroom. Do you struggle with that, or because it's all a resource compete, really?
I think a lot of times people view that as if you're really good in athletics, or that you're letting other things slide. And I don't think that's actually the case.
No, I don't think.
I think the case is that it goes back to what I said earlier. If the expectation is for your kids to achieve, no matter what that is, that could be welding. Our FFA is tremendous.
Right.
Like we just finished in the top 10 again this year in 2 different categories. I got to go up there and watch the kids perform and get their awards.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an expectation there and the first thing they said after we didn't get first place is we're going to start working for next year right now. Well, that's the definition, and that's not just that's a sponsorship, that's an activity, but it's directly tied back to the classroom. So that's actually a classroom expectation, and it's no different with our athletes. They have expectations in the classroom. Now, obviously, every kid, their abilities in those areas, it's no different than the abilities on a court or on a field or in an FFA competition or whatever. Some kids innately have more talent than others, right? And some things come easier to other people. Like math can be really easy to one person and very difficult for the next. Well, but they may, if they're not really good at math, they may excel in English, right? So we want to push that, foster that, and grow that, because more than likely that's probably what they're going to turn to as a way to have a career.
Right.
They're not going to fight the fact that I'm not very good at math because they probably don't like it, right? It's kind of like I'm going over there beating my head against the wall over and over. I'm not going to do it. And so I think that actually all of that is joint. I think the expectation of success, I think if you have that in your athletic program or you're one of those where that directly ties back into actually expecting that as well in the classroom. And it just kind of fosters and grows. But it takes the people who are doing it and leading those areas to be the ones to make that happen. So it's all about your people.
Oh, it always is. But it's also about vision.
True.
It's about vision and being able to say, we're going to have excellence in the classroom. We're going to have excellence in this student club. We're going to have excellence in this athletic, whatever we're pursuing, we're going to pursue excellence, and then listen to see how do we get there. I think that's how I'm approaching it.
Well, I think my question is to everybody is always, how can I help you get there? What do you need? What can I do to help you get to where we need to go? Because the one thing I said on day one, and this is probably the last thing, is I said, here's the one thing I can tell you. I've talked for 15 minutes about this, and this. I said, but here's my number one thing. I love to win. I expect to win. So we're going to go out and win. It doesn't matter what it is.
That's setting the expectation. That's setting the vision right there.
Let's go make it happen. And how can I help you do that?
That sounds awesome. So every superintendent or referee has this aha moment, right? When judgment, timing, and leadership all collide. What was that moment for you in education?
Education. It probably goes back to my time at Vienna when I was teaching and coaching, and Dr. Trover, who I'm sure you know well, Marlies. Yeah. She's kind of like my second mom. So she literally badgered me to the point because I was just refusing to go back to school because I was more than happy being the head basketball coach. I was getting ready to be the AD after or co-AD after Tom Cole retired, and that, honestly, when I got into it, that's all I really wanted to do. Teach. I love teaching. I love coaching, and I could see myself doing that for the remainder of my career. And she just kept persisting. You need to go back to school. Well, you're going to be a tremendous. I don't want to do that. And finally, she just wore me down, and I went back. And
where'd you get it from? McKendree?
No, SIU. I got
SIU.
I got my undergrad, my graduate in administration, and then my specials all at SIU. And so it opened the doors, and then when I got it, I'm like, I'm not going to do that because actually I had my best team that I was ever going to have was entering as freshman, and I worked really hard for 4 years to get to that point, and just had a joy coaching the kids that I had. And I actually had turned down a different principal job. Alvarado offered me. I was in the middle of an open gym in June, and I'm working with my kids, my team. Phone call comes like, we're in a school board meeting in El Dorado. We'd like to offer you the job, which I thought was kind of odd. They didn't have me there, but they were just offering me on the phone. And I'm like, nah, I don't think so. Never mind. Appreciate the offer, but I'm not doing it. And then about 3 weeks later, the principal's job at Pinckneyville came open. And I didn't want to, but there was something that always attracted me to Pinckneyville. And the reason was it was a lot like the Lawrenceville I grew up in.
I can see that.
And very similar type of towns. And now they're probably not the same now, but it always reminded me. And so I'm like, I'll throw my hat. And then honestly, at that time, there was 2 of the candidates were locals. I'm 28, 29 years old. I don't think I had a shot. I just want to get an interview. And so I get an interview, and then I get a second interview, and then they're like, we're going to bring you to the board. And then they hire me. And that was kind of the moment of, all right, I think my life's changing pretty quickly here. I mean, I had my oldest son was 6 months old at the time, and we pick up and we move and we start that transition. And I'm looking back on it, must have been really crazy at that time because I took a 1-year contract at a really low ball rate. Like I was only making like $5,000 more than what I was making teaching and coaching. And with the promise that they were going to give me a multi-year contract and a bigger raise closer to what my predecessor had been making after that year, which some sage advice, don't ever take that because that never happens. But and then on top of that, after I get hired, the first thing the board wants me to do is change the entire schedule, which you might as well throw the gauntlet at a principal to come into a brand new school and then want to change the schedule. And on top of that, it was a schedule that they developed because they were one of the first ones in the state to go to a block schedule, and Pinckneyville was like the guinea pig of the block schedules. And the people who did it were still teaching in the building. And so that's when I learned I had to be able to work with people, because I formed a team to go through that process, and it didn't become about me. It became about the kind of the organically way it came out of that to make it happen. And so that was probably my first aha moment in education.
So how do you balance academic performance and student well-being with the extracurricular engagement, especially in smaller districts?
So do you mean as far as how much time they're spending with everything, we obviously have a lot of kids that are involved in multiple things, and so everybody has to share.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think communication, obviously, amongst each other to make that happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, you'd be crazy to think that there aren't times where there's people who are mad about, well, they're pulling this kid or they're pulling that kid, and I need this kid and I need that. That happens. But overall, everybody wants everybody to be successful. And so I think that's where it starts at. And so it takes a good understanding by our adults of how much our kids can handle and to balance that out. And so there's an advantage of being a small school because there's not as many moving parts as far as the number of people that have to be involved in a decision. And so I think that makes that a little easier. But then again, if you look at bigger schools, most of those kids are not involved in as many things because they're probably more specialized.
Right.
So that kind of changes that narrative. So it just comes back to people working together for the same cause.
Okay. So you worked through complexities of leading small rural districts. What do you see as the greatest opportunities for and challenges for rural districts in the future?
Well, I think we're going to continue to see the biggest challenges as our populations are shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that is happening quicker in some places than others. So, if I look back on it now, 32 years ago when I graduated high school, and I had, I think, about 110, 115 kids in my class. And of the top probably 40 kids in my class, I'm not sure that there's 2 that live back in Lawrenceville.
Right.
And, when I was at Pinckneyville, we were really focused on, because the town was kind of dying slowly. And I was on part of a committee to it was more about the whole town and things we needed to do to improve. And one was building a new high school and one was building a new hospital and those kinds of things, make it attractive for families to want to live there. Because those are the first things people look at.
Sure.
And so that was a big portion of that attack. And so they've kind of stabilized, so to speak, because of those things and those opportunities versus you have schools down here where those, Goreville, we're lucky enough for 15 minutes from Marion, so you have about everything you need pretty close to 30 minutes from Carbondale. So I think, but if you get deeper south, down here where we're at here at Shawnee College, and these communities and the opportunities for people, what do we have to offer them? And so going back to what we talked about earlier, that's where we've really got to be more trade center focused, I think, with a lot of our kids in our high schools, because those are jobs that are readily available here. Mm-hmm. And then we can keep them, because that's what you have to pull those people back. And so that's always kind of been a big focus. So I think that's one of the challenges and opportunities that we have kind of that works together. And then obviously funding. Funding is always an issue. The state, while they've been funding EBF, which is great, and we hope it continues, it's been a big help to us, because I was obviously a superintendent during the time where we were getting prorations and not getting checks in June that we've been promised, and trying to figure out how to manage that back in 09 and 10 and 11 and some of those years. To now they're cutting the MCATs, and so with your transportation and special ed funding being reduced from your reimbursement from the state, that means you're now pulling it from local sources. Yeah, and so that battle, while we had that, I guess, how they always talk about the housing bubble and they talk about this, well, we had the education bubble with all of the ESSER money and all those types of things, where we had money we had to figure out how to spend. Unfortunately, we couldn't keep it so that we could then spend it later on things we knew were coming up. That's disappeared. And so now I have a feeling that actually what they're predicting is going to go backwards here over the next probably 5 years at least. And how we handle that will be big, because I think the other thing that, if you look at all of our neighboring states, and it's been something that's been talked about forever, and I don't think it's going to happen in the next 6 years of my career that I have left, but if you look at all the states around us, every one of them has consolidation. They're all county schools. They're all, or bigger city schools. There's no schools of 100 kids. And in Illinois, we got 800 and some plus school districts. And for them to be able to fund, for us to be able to have opportunities for kids, I just don't know how eventually that's not going to have to change.
Yeah, when I sit and do the math, because we look at the geography and the demographics for our communities. We serve 5 counties, and our analytics show the population in 1972 was around 68,000, and then last year it was around 52,000. If you just look at it, it's 2% a year like clockwork. So we're losing roughly 2% a year. And when you look at the high school classes of what they are, because you can look at the IBH or ISB data, mm-hmm. and you can see who, your count data and stuff. You can see that those classes have followed that trend, but actually at a higher rate. So it's about 4.5% a year is what we're losing in terms of school age students. So what that, is pretty easily, you can jump to the conclusion that we're getting older because all the families are moving out, mm-hmm. right? And taking their kids with them. We're getting older and poorer. And so when you look at counties like Alexander County, where you worked with Meridian, and you think about Egyptian, Caro, and Meridian all serving pretty much Alexander County. I know you're in Pulaski County, Meridian, but the proximity is mm-hmm. close. You start to wonder, there's only 5,000 people in the whole county. How long can you sustain it? Because the tax base is eroded to a point where if the state doesn't pay, what are you going to do? And so, you can see consolidation coming. I agree with you 100%, but because of the nature, I think of Union County where I live, mm-hmm. we got 4 school districts, well, more than that actually, but 4 high school districts. I don't know how you sustain it. It's just, you can't do it. And I kind of worry about that for our schools.
I really think that in those areas of the Deep South, and then also like say in the west central part of the state, mm-hmm. where they have similar demographics to the northern, very western portion right. of the state, you look at all of those areas, and then even on the east, kind of in between Danville and Paris and that area, there's a lot of, and they've had some schools that have consolidated over the years. And there's a lot of co-ops and athletics in a lot of those schools. They still maybe have their school, but the athletic programs are already co-opted. And you see some of that down here too. But I think that's one of the biggest challenges and things that's going to be probably the next 10, 15 years for education.
I've seen it happen in Central Illinois, Mowequa,
Central A&M.
Central A&M. Now they became really a powerhouse school
Mhm.
once those two kind of combined, and they actually built a nice school. It was modern at the time, so it's not all downside. It's just you lose some of that local feel. And
Hardest animal to kill is the mascot.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably true. So let's turn to some happier news. I know the report cards just came out not too long ago, and I didn't see where you guys did, but I did look back at Meridian's last year, and your district math and literacy outcomes drew public attention. You know, it was good in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you approach improving student achievement without losing sight of the whole child development?
Well, you know, the ironic part of that for me is I'm not a huge believer in standardized testing.
Me either. But
And I think, you know, one shot, one day thing is not a really fair assessment. What we really dug into down there was looking at quarterly improvement on our own local assessments, and figured that if we could do that and then get the kids to actually take the testing series for that one day, we would just see improvement. And so it really came to breaking that back and boiling it down to, all right, we need to get these kids from A to G, and then from G to M, and then M to Z, and how we're going to do that, and where we're going to meet it. So we started some early intervention reading recovery program down there, and we had been doing that for about 3 years at that point, and really capturing those kindergarten, first graders, second graders very early on to get them. Because when I first got there, on trend, our students were 5 years behind. And so if you were in 8th grade, you were reading on the 3rd grade level. And so we just reduced that gap to where I think last year our gap was down to 1.5 years behind. And so that's kind of where that success came from. I got that program from, it's what we used in Millstadt. It actually was beneficial to my youngest son, because when I first got there, one, it's super expensive to run. So that was one of the things at that time when money was very tight. We actually was on the cutting block every year, and was one of the things that the people in the board and the community wanted us to get, because it was expensive. That's easy thing to look at. Then my son had it, and my son went from being very verbal to having multiple ear infections to the point he lost all of his communication skills, and then had surgery, take his adenoids and do different things out, and came back and had to be totally retaught. And within 2 years, I had him back at grade level by the time he was in 3rd grade. And it was because of those ladies who were working with him. And so I got to see it with my own eyes. But then I also started getting a little more invested in watching it, and watch them go to SIUE and work in the labs with their kids and see how their training worked. And I'm like, wow, I can see how this works now. So when we got down to Meridian, I'm like, I'd like to do this, but I got to find the right people. And so it just happened to be a teacher who retired, but she still wanted to work part-time. And so I said, you know what, I think I can afford this, and we could do this, and you be the reading teacher. And then she recruited 2 other retired ladies, and so for 3 days a week they would come in and they would break down with these kids and make that happen. So that was on that side. And then on the math side, it was doing the same thing, just in a different way. But that was more of our classroom teacher-led type of stuff with some RTI pull out for a little bit, but mainly our classroom teachers.
I think that personalized learning directed to the individual's needs is super important, and it's continuing to be even more important as we've aged as a society. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I went to school in the 60s and 70s, my mom at the table every night, making sure I did my homework, making sure I had, starting kindergarten, I knew my ABCs and knew sight words and all that good stuff. And then, you know, when I was in 3rd grade, I mean, I just every night at the dinner table, multiplication tables, 7 times 8, 8 times 7. That was my tough one. And so, but I mean, the family disengagement, I think, that we see in our communities as it relates to the learning. It's not everywhere, but by and large, it's a lot different than it was when we grew up. And so without that family intervention, the kids only can get it at school. and they can only get it from that one-on-one relationship. So I really applaud the work that you're doing there, because I think it's important. It's going to continue to be even more important as we move forward in the future. When you think about K-12 collaboration with higher ed, what would you see as a strong, seamless partnership? What would that look like for you?
Well, I think we've tried to evolve that over the years, because one, it's communication, knowing the people, and having the people and that's really evolved in the last 3 to 4 years, with better connection with Shawnee when I was at Meridian and now at Goreville, and having the same people involved that I know I can pick up the phone and call and get a hold of them, and we can actually get things done. Because I know the first time we sat down at Meridian, I'd fought for maybe 2.5 years trying to get some programming done for our kids, and lots of things happened. Things just never, kind of always was on the table and then fell through.
Right.
And there was always a revolving door, and just I would be dealing with this person and that person would be gone, and then now we're back to square one. And so getting that stability, and like I said, having a person that I could call and say, all right, this is what we'd like to do, or this is what I need, or this is our issue, how can we solve it? And then, Teal's been right there, and so I know I could pick up the phone. And then obviously Dr. Teskey, who just retired, who I've known for forever, very easy to pick up and say, hey, this is what's going on, how can we solve this, how can we make that happen? And those things have really been going on for the last 3 to 4 years. That's, I think, made it a lot easier, more seamless for us, and create opportunities for our kids, which is ultimately all we care about.
Right. High school graduates often transition into the community college or in the workforce. What skills or habits do you think are the most critical for students for long-term success in order to be able to do that?
Well, it's probably not something that you actually focus on, but common sense. They don't have a class on that. I think you can learn that. And a lot of that comes back to being able to communicate, being able to build relationships with people. Because you went back to people want people who can work in teams. You can have people have all kinds of great knowledge and know how to math or all these things, but if they can't communicate, they're going to struggle. So unless they have a job where they're just isolated by themselves, and there are some of those, but it's not too much in today's world. So skills, they got to have the basic skills. I mean, that's obvious, and that's where we should have that. I think when they get to community college, what a lot of times I see our kids struggle with is we're not necessarily doing the best job we can in certain areas, so then they come in and they struggle with that college English class, because whatever we're doing at the K-12 level has not prepared the kids for whatever's being expected for them here. And that's a big issue for me that we need to fix, because I think that's on our end. And so I'm not sure. I think that those basic skills is where we come in, and then I think where the community colleges is refining those skills to then give those kids the opportunities. Because I tell kids all the time, here's the deal in college. The first 2 years are going to be terrible, because you're going to take all these classes that aren't going to mean a whole lot to you, because it's not really what you want to do. You say you want to be a teacher, you want to be in radio, TV. Well, you expect to go in and pick up a camera or get in front of a microphone, and instead you're trying to do a college English paper, or you're taking a logic class, or you're taking a weather class, or you're taking all these other, and you're like, why am I doing this? This is not. Well, that's just, they're trying to feed through who can get the work done and who can get this thing done. And then that door will open up. It'll be like a great light that all of a sudden appears that you get to do what you always wanted to do. And then you'll find out. I think that's changed a little bit, because we've got all of these new things now, like the education classes that we have dual credit with, that we work with Shawnee with. Gives them a picture now, and maybe stops them from getting into something that they may not, and going down that road and then having to divert. Because, even when I went to school in '93, the average number of times a kid changed their major was like 3, I think.
Yeah, it's probably at least that now. That's what you're talking about is kind of a hot button for me, though. Being an old dog in an education environment. My first question to a student is, what do you want to be, right? What job is it? And it doesn't matter I mean, there's thousands of jobs with SOC codes, SIC codes that you can look in the federal database, but there's 16 career clusters.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter which cluster you go to, transportation or healthcare or manufacturing or construction, or if you ask employers, and I've worked 37 years in this business, and I've talked to people who hired higher ed graduates from all of these clusters. It doesn't matter, they all tell me the same things. What do you need from a graduate? They need to be able to communicate with our customer. They need to be able to communicate with each other. They need to be able to speak. They need to be able to interpret technical manuals, write technical documents, write technical logs, do things like that. So they need to be able to write. So read, write. And then they'll say they need to be able to solve problems. Well, what does that mean? Well, they need to be able to solve complex social problems. They need to be able to solve our customers' problems. They need to be able to solve business problems. So when you start to ask them, then what do they need? Then they'll say, well, they need to be able to weld, or they need to be able to troubleshoot an auto, or they need to be able to work in the nursing field. So those skills are universal, the reading, writing, and solving problems. So then you ask yourself, how does one become a problem solver? A problem, in my mind, is the ability to take to collect information, assimilate it, and then re-assimilate it in a way that helps solve a problem. And so how do you do that? You do that by practice. So if you're in history and you have to write a paper, understanding the political and social climate of 1776 is what's more important than who was the first president. Mm-hmm. And then be able to think about that and put it in and articulate it into a paper. That's important, and it doesn't matter what career you're in.
Yeah.
If you're able to do that. Same thing with logic. Same thing with writing and communication. So most people don't see this about me because I've always been a CTE dean, but I've always been an advocate of the arts, of the ability to solve those problems, because you develop a sense of habit when you're starting to write a paper, and this is the approach that you do. And even and this is where I kind of differ from the dual credit folks. I don't care if they have to take the same courses again. I took biology when I was in high school. I took biology again in college. I learned something different. I did some of the same things, but I practiced. I got better at problem solving. I got better at understanding it. So I think from a big picture perspective, that's the message we need to be sending our kids. You're not wasting your time in these classes. They're not classes that you don't need to take. These are classes that are going to help you regardless of what career you're going to be in. So that's my 2 cents. So the more you can, if you've been in this business long enough that I feel like you understand it and probably could agree, but that's what we need to be telling our high school kids. These aren't wasted years. Your communications, your English, your math classes you're taking, your social science classes, they're all important. They're providing you a framework so that you can solve problems in your whatever chosen field that you're going to be in. So,
well, and I think that goes back to who they have as the instructor in that course too.
Right. Well,
and that's why I say that they always ask, well, that's the trying ground. You got to get that, and what you get out of that is going to actually kind of plant the seeds for the rest of the time. And they don't, it's that stick-to-itiveness that people like to talk about in athletics or whatever you're trying to do or anything you're trying to change, right? I think that our generations now don't necessarily have that a lot of times, because it's a lot easier just to say I'm not going to do it and go on to something else, because that's what they see all the time. And so I always try to find kids that I want kids who are persistent. They got the drive to go do that, and we're gonna make that happen.
So you spend a lot of time managing both gym floors and boardroom floors, school floors. How do you foster innovation and teamwork in those amongst teachers and staff without creating too many technical fouls?
Well, for me, officiating is really, I know riding motorcycles is your
right.
stress relief. That's your joy and that kind of thing. And ironically, people don't understand this because they look at it like I'm crazy. But officiating is mine. It's my relief away from dealing with my whatever issues I've got going on at school. But it goes back the same thing. And so, for instance, in football, we just my crew actually 2 weeks ago worked the Class 3A state finals in Bloomington, and it's the same 5 guys. We work all year together. We've been doing it. Our crew's been 8 years together, and we go through highs and lows, and that's kind of on a micro thing because there's just 5 of us. But there are weeks where there may be tension amongst the group because of things that happen during the games, right?
Sure.
Or questions that are asked. And so that's on the micro level. And so everybody kind of has to have a role. And so I think that having that, but also taking my school experience allows me to work both to where I'm pretty good at reading when I need to talk to people or I need to pull back. And I think that's something that's evolved over time to where, and then when is the right time to say something and what do I say? And I think you have to be able to do that in both my role as a superintendent and my role as official and the team that I'm working with, or the people I'm working with. And I don't think, a lot of times people are too quick to jump in and say something at the wrong time, which will either throw kerosene on that fire or it may put the fire out, but that fire may reignite. And so a lot of times I think the same thing can happen when you're dealing with your board and you're sitting there. And so you have to understand that timing is important. Just like a major decision that you're making with your school district, is the timing of it is super important. And how are you going to present that? How are you going to, so I've always had a thing as administrator, I send out a weekly update, no matter what. And I'm very consistent about it. And most of the time, it may only be 3, 4, 5 things. Other weeks it may be more. There's some weeks where I'm kind of having to make things up maybe, just to send some information. But I've always said I only have one rule as an administrator and as a superintendent. This is what I've told every board. My one rule is this: don't surprise me, I won't surprise you. Because I can deal with anything, but if I don't know about it, I can't deal with it. And so what I mean by that is when you show up at a board meeting and then somebody says, well, so-and-so's told me this a couple of weeks ago. Well, you have my phone number. You could text me, you could call me, you could email me, you could show up at my office. I want to know that 2 weeks ago. Because if it's something I need to get in front of, or I can wait, maybe it's something I don't need to deal with. But at least I want to know. Just like if I know something, I'm going to send it to you in my weekly update. Or if, sometimes something's more critical and urgent, and then there's multiple weekly updates. There's something I have to send out on a Tuesday because they need to know this. And so I think that right there is how you prevent having to call all the T's that you referred to. Because as long as they know that I'm not going to bring something to the table and surprise them, and they don't do it conversely to me, we can get through anything. I've been doing it long enough. I've got lots of connections and lots of people I can talk to for advice, lots of people I can run things past, and that is a huge benefit to me. As I've gotten older now, that's turned to me some, as people call me for advice.
Sure.
But so I think that's the thing, and I think you do the same thing when you're an official. Dealing with coaches. I was working Saturday night in Marion Massac County basketball game, and Bruce Mayhew, official buddy of mine, good buddy, he does softball. My wife thinks he's one of the best softball umpires around. And he's sitting in the stands in fourth quarter, and he said, if I ever start a law firm, John, he goes, I'm hiring you. He goes, because you pleaded your case the whole night to both of those coaches. And so I laughed, which I really didn't say that much. I've been around long enough, they just talk to me. And we have that relationship. Hey, if I mess up something, I'm going to tell you. I mean, I've told coaches before, I missed that. I'll try to do better. And if you're just honest, there's not much they can say. Now, if you say it every trip down the floor, you probably need to go find something else to do. But it's all right.
So, what advice would you give sage college presidents like myself about supporting high school students and getting them ready for college and careers? What advice would you give me?
Well, I think, the one thing when you first got here, you came and met every superintendent. And I think that went a long way because we really hadn't had that. And so I think trying to find out what each, because we were talking about each community is very unique, each school is very unique. They have their own culture, their own needs, their own set of expectations. And so trying to manage that from your point of view, trying to blend that all together to provide the opportunities that are needed for each of those regions looks a little different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think just having went from the southern part of it to now the northern part of it, I can see the differences, but I can also see the similarities. And trying to meld that together in your spot as the college president is difficult, but that's what you've been trying to do. And obviously it takes time to make that happen, but it's kind of evolved. If you really look about it, it's been a short amount of time that it's evolved in. And so I'm thankful for that, because as I said earlier, you know, the first 2 years I felt like I was spinning my wheels because I wasn't getting anywhere with where I thought we needed to go and what could benefit our kids. And that changed, and that changed when you came aboard. So I appreciate that. So I think that's the biggest thing is, you know, trying to understand the needs of each community that's very different.
That's sage advice, I think. So technology and AI, and they're rapidly changing how students learn. How do you see these tools reshaping K-12 education, and what should colleges do to adapt?
Oh, when I read that question earlier, I'm like, I'm not really sure. I mean, you got ChatGPT and Grok, and you got all these other things. I mean, you can. I mean, I'll write something up and just throw it in there, and then it
makes you sound really smart, don't it?
It's like, man. But at the same time, like, that also doesn't sound like me. So, you know, is it that comes back to the point, do you want your message to come from your heart or come from the computer? You know, and I've always been a kind of a guy, I think that I kind of lead from in here. I've got this, but I lead here because I care. And so kind of polishing that message up, does that change how, you know, people think about me? Is always my question when I do that. But I think that, you know, in some professional forms, it's a great thing. And so I guess from a student standpoint, what they're going to have to deal with college is the same thing we're going to have to deal with high school kids. We already are. You know, when they write papers, so then it goes back to what you talked about with problem solving. So what should our focus be about? It should be about how we get kids to solve problems, and they can use that stuff to give them ideas, but then they actually got to solve it themselves. And so that's, I think, is going to be kind of the crux of where you're going to have to get to. And I don't have the answers for that.
Yeah. I just had a meeting with the Illinois Deaconess chair this morning, Wes Williams, and they talked about how they're using and integrating AI into just about everything that they do. And so it's pretty clear to me that artificial intelligence is going to infiltrate. It's not just about writing papers.
It's everything.
It's about using it ethically and responsibly to solve workplace problems. And there's ways, and I think that we're all learning this right now, where you can use AI as a thought partner. This is what I want to say. I got a convocation coming up. This is the theme of the convocation. These are the things that I want to say. And it starts giving you ideas. And then instead of just copying and pasting that's not me. That's not my voice. And so having it integrate more into my voice is important. And over time, and I've used it now for 2 years, it does a pretty good job first attempt. But it's not like I'm trying to create a new paper and get by. It's how I'm using it to solve problems. Look, what are some different funding mechanisms that community colleges can use to fund infrastructure projects? And they'll go out and they'll find out research for me about what these 10 or 12 ideas are. Where are these grants at? And so it's a much more powerful tool than Google.
Yes.
So I think what I'm seeing, at least from a higher ed standpoint, is it's probably not going to replace the faculty member, but if you're doing just generic work, old Bloom's taxonomy, knowledge understanding work, you can find the answers pretty damn quick. I could probably take a number of teachers' test and pass easily without taking their course, just by using ChatGPT or some other AI engine. Where it starts to fail and where it starts to become a powerful tool to those when you start going for that analysis evaluation pieces. So I feel like as educators, we got to figure that part out so that we can then teach our kids what they need to know and how to use it successfully. What do you think of that? Is that the wrong?
No, I think you're spot on, because I just know that I've just kind of started really getting to use it. I mean, it was around, I guess, And I consider myself to be somewhat technologically savvy, but I really was kind of, I don't know if it's ill principle in me that's like felt like I was cheating if I used it type of a thing, you know? And so, but here recently I've just started to use it more. I've started to get the same things that you're talking about, that, man, I can get to this really quick, or I can give it some ideas and it'll spit this out, and then I can look over it and decide, is that really what I'm searching for? Or is that, or then, you know, it'll ask you the questions and say, well, do you want me to refine this to make it more of this type of voice or that? And yeah, I think I want to see what that looks like. And then you can kind of go back and analyze it. And so I think all of those things, but the informational piece of it and just how quickly it does it, when I can spend hours trying to Google it and then I can get that information in 10 minutes, it's the change. And honestly, I'm glad I'm not 18. I mean, I'd love to be 18 again with the knowledge I have, but I don't want to be 18 with the knowledge I had at that time and try to figure out this, because I'm not sure, not sure what that would look like. That'd be kind of scary to me.
I think every workplace is going to be using it for making their businesses better and serving their customers better. So we're going to have to figure that out, or else somebody's going to come in and do it for us.
Well, we'll have to.
Yeah. So what's one leadership lesson you've learned the hard way? I think maybe you probably are, or one you wish you learned earlier. You might have already addressed it some.
It actually, ironically, would go back to my second year as a teacher, and I was an assistant football coach. And
positions coach?
I was offensive coordinator.
Oh.
And on the varsity squad. Our head coach quit the first day of the year, and then we had just a bunch of basketball coaches who were going to be the football coaches until the old assistant came out of retirement. And I didn't realize I was the varsity offensive coordinator until the first game of the season, when I handed in the play sheet and he handed it back to me and said, "No, you're calling the plays." And so I'm like, okay. And,
about communication.
Yeah. So we were not very good. Now, I will say, the first play we were in from scrimmage that year, we scored a touchdown. I thought, man, this is easy. Then we didn't score the rest of the game. So I was not very good. My play calling got worse. But it was probably the fifth or sixth game of the season. And I was at Fairfield. We were getting ready to go play Red Hill, which, growing up in Lawrenceville, Red Hill's our rival. And they weren't very good either. So I'm like, we might have a chance in this game. And it was first half. We were in the game. I think we were probably down a touchdown. And they pin us deep on a punt. I think we get the ball to 2. And so we practice every week. Every week. We're inside the 5. We go on 2 on everything. We're trying to draw them off sides, get 5 yards, get ourselves from being pinned. We false started 4 straight times.
Half the distance.
Yeah. So by the time we're done with that, we're at the half-yard line. Then we get the punt block. They scored a touchdown. And I am not a happy camper. My mom and dad were at the game, because right next to Lawrenceville, and they were sitting on our side and sitting next to my principal, and I think she was probably sitting next to the AD or assistant AD. And principal's son was one of my offensive linemen, and they came off the field, and what I said was, and I screamed it, "We have to be the dumbest team in North America," at the top of my lungs. And I said, we practice that every single day, over and over, and we can't even go on 2. That's all, and that's what I said. And they go sit on the bench. Honestly, we continued to play. We didn't play very well the rest of the night and got beat. And I really didn't think anything of it. After the game, I go meet my parents, and as we're walking, my mom says to me, "John, why did you say that?" And I said, "Say what?" She goes, "In the first half, when you guys false started 4 times, and they came off the field and repeated what I said." And I said, "Well, because Mom, we were." I said, "I didn't cuss." She goes, "Doesn't matter. You demeaned them as loud as you possibly could. The stands are a yard from the field." And my dad kind of looked at me and goes, "She's right." Well, Monday morning, I got called in the principal's office. And got put on the carpet pretty good. Got suspended for practice for 2 days. Got suspended for a game. And I grew up in Lawrenceville, and we got coached hard.
Yeah,
And I'll be really honest with you. The things that were said to me in practices and stuff like that, today that they obviously wouldn't fly.
Right.
And I always coached hard and stuff, but I never. But I learned right then that doesn't matter the moment. It doesn't matter if you don't cuss, or it doesn't matter how you go about saying something and how you intentionally say something, and the effects that can have can damage your relationship with those people. And so you have to be very critical of yourself when you're getting ready to make a comment on how you're going to deliver that, because the impact of that can lead to other problems down the road.
Yep. So between leading a K-12 district and officiating, these are jobs that are all year long most of the time. How do you relax? How do you know, what do you do? How do you stay energized, re-energized for these types of things?
Well, I don't. I probably officiate 5 baseball games in the spring, so I kind of just cut everything out. My wife's a softball coach, so I spend a lot of time following her. Kind of become a softball mom in the spring. But as far as relaxation, I said earlier, officiating for me is that it does lead to some long hours. There's a lot of times I'm not getting home till midnight or different times like that. My wife and I like to travel. We like to go do a lot of things. We're at the point, youngest one is a senior in high school, so we can kind of go and do as we please. And this past summer she got beat in the sectionals, so we took off and went to Oklahoma City and went to the College Softball World Series. She'd never been. One of the things she always wanted to do. Just happened to be also Texas Tech was down there with Jerry Glasgow, who she's really good friends with, and so that was quite a ride. We got to go experience that, and it was really cool. And she bought me tickets to see Coldplay in El Paso, Texas. So we made a road trip out of that, and went to Dallas, Fort Worth for a couple of days. Made our way down to El Paso, survived the 115-degree heat, but we were 10 feet away from Coldplay. It was awesome. And then made our way back and actually looped our way back through New Mexico, then Lubbock, and went to Texas Tech and went to the softball, their field and facilities, and carved our way back. So we like to do those things. And right now, I think we're planning, hopefully, to take a trip next summer to England and Scotland. That's kind of on our bucket list. We haven't done. So that's kind of how we like to relax.
So Coldplay, that's one of your favorites?
Yes, Coldplay.
Who would you say is your favorite? Is it mostly hard rock, metal, alternative?
We're big Guns N' Roses people. We've seen them 3 times. We kind of like everything. One of her bucket list was to go see Elton John on his last tour. We went and saw him down in Nashville. But then that same year we went to Nashville that year and saw Bon Jovi too. So we kind of then. Was it 3 years ago? Bought our tickets for Maroon 5 out in Vegas. So we made a road trip and drove to Vegas and back on Route 66 and went and see
That's a heck of a drive, but it's probably a good one.
Yeah, it was. It was over about 8 days. We went to Kansas City, watched the Royals play because her other bucket list is to go to Major League Baseball Stadium. So we went there. Then went to Dodge City. Then we went up and went and watched the Colorado Rockies play. Their aunt and uncle, they live in Greeley. Went and visited them. Then we took off. We stopped in Vail and ate lunch, and then we stayed out and glamped in the middle of the desert in Utah, southern Utah. Yeah, it was the best sunrise I've ever seen in my life. And then we made it to Vegas, and then we came back and we stopped in Prescott, Arizona, and stayed there, and then we stayed in probably Oklahoma City, and we finished it up. But so yeah, that's kind of our thing. We just a lot of times for her birthday and Valentine's Day, I buy her concert tickets to all kinds of places, and we go. But not this year. We're saving up for that other trip.
Did you head to St. Louis last year and do the Metallica thing?
Yes, we went. Well, we actually went and saw Metallica at Nashville last year.
Ah. So I took my oldest and we went to St. Louis and did the Pantera Metallica stuff. So it was reliving back the 80s.
Yeah.
I've kind of grown as I got older and liked a little more more aggressive, like 5-finger death punch.
Oh, okay, yeah. I've seen them.
Slipknot.
I've seen them at Louder Than Life in Louisville. I will say this, I probably can't handle that anymore.
Yeah, I
the
can't
festival thing. I'm more of a one band with an opener kind of a guy now.
Yeah, I hear you, brother. I hear you. I back in my youth, I did every Ozfest possible. But those were day-long shows.
Yeah.
If you could change one thing in the education system, nationally, statewide, doesn't matter, what would it be and why?
Well, it goes back to the unique focus of standardized testing and how we try to rank everybody. I find it to be ridiculous. And anytime there's a one-time shot of something, that picture is not really the picture of what actually happens. And too many times when they put statistics out and they try to validate something, that's what they use. So, I like to see the success rates of kids who complete school and then what careers they end up in and how successful they are. And I think that's more valid measurement of how we're being productive in our school districts and settings.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it might be good for a one-time snapshot or baseline or something, but when you start putting funding on it, it's a fail right there, because there's, even good students don't test well.
No.
And so, yeah, I don't like that too. I agree with you 100%. So you may have kind of alluded to this a little bit, but in 10 to 20 years, I know neither one of us will be working, but what do you think schools will look like? Goreville, what do you think they'll look like?
Well, I think it goes back to what I talked about earlier. It just kind of depends on how the population. Goreville's been pretty steady. I mean, pretty much that high school's remained 155 to 185 forever. And the reason is, like, if there was more housing available in our district, people would move in. Because as soon as a house comes open, it seems like it's sold quickly.
Right, yeah.
And so, we just are, I think that kind of will always be kind of the status quo. So I think the evolution in the next 10, 20 years will go back to what you talked about with AI and how we deal with that, and then the expansion of online learning, even in a high school setting. But because we're seeing more and more kids who are going straight to homeschooling. They may be in school for a while, and then the easiest thing, and then there's all kinds of programs and opportunities. But here's what concerns me about that, and it's always concerned me. If we go back to that piece we've talked about so many times today, communication, socialization, to me, is a huge part of education, and maybe even more than what you get out of a textbook. Learning how to live with one another, and we think about all the things that happen in today's society around the globe, and how people, don't like this type of person or that type of person, and then you see the things that happen at all kinds of different places. Well, what's that stem from? It stems from not being able to understand the people that you're around and people you talk to. One of my favorite things to do in my life, and we go back to relaxation, and I think this is really important, is having a conversation with somebody I don't know.
You sound like me.
My wife and I, when we go out to eat, if there's 2 spots open at the bar, I'm going to go sit there and eat my dinner, and I want to talk to the person next to me. And I say, well, shouldn't you be talking to your wife? Well, we and her go everywhere together all the time, right? We talk all the time. We're with each other in the cars. My favorite, I want to know about Bob. I mean, I met one of the guys who's like one of the biggest Buffalo Bills tailgaters. He's part of that infamous group, that has we have an open invitation after one night conversation. I mean, I've got his number saved. It's in my phone. We're going one of these times. I'm not getting ketchup and mustard sprayed on me, and I'm not jumping off the or the hood, but or onto the table. But open invitation, and that was seriously just one night sitting there for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Just talking, and those are the cool people I get to meet.
I love doing that too. We go on vacations with kids, take the kids, and so I'm always talking to somebody that's out there. Hey, what's it like living here? And, having good conversations and getting to know the people. It's just fun.
We go when we had our family vacations in Panama City Beach. Our neighbors were some of the funnest people. We hung out with them, and you go down to the beach. Well, some people just want to hang on. Hey, what's up? Where are you from? What do you do? One of the guys staying next to us, he was Colby Rasmus, who played for the Cardinals and other teams in Major League. him and they're best friends. They grew up, played together in Alabama. Well, we got to know each other. We're friends now to this day.
Yeah, there was. We were in Florida too. We had met this couple at a bar eatery the night before, and we started talking, and they were, we got to know them, and we got to be good friends. But I didn't realize they were so close to where we were at on the beach where we were staying. And the next day, I was trying to let my kids do some fishing from the shore, and the guy comes out, and I'm like, "Where?" He said, "Let me show you kids how to do this." And my kids learned a different skill by just us talking, and he was connected, and we had lots of adult beverages that day and got too much sun, but kids learned how to do some fishing off the shore, which I couldn't teach them.
Yeah.
So
it's all about meeting people.
Yeah, it is. That's kind of the joy of life in some ways for me, anyway. So let me ask, getting close to winding this down, but what keeps you excited about this next generation of students and educators?
Well, so I can answer that in two parts. So we had 6 people retire last year at Goreville and the teaching staff. And so we actually have a lot of new teachers, and 2 or 3 of them are brand new, right straight out of college. And, as much as the shortage we've had over the years here, and especially what I dealt with down at Meridian trying to find teachers, and you talked about second chance you. Well, a lot of times down there it was second chance you. We were bringing in some people who maybe had some trouble and issues in the past and needed a second chance, and we had some who were very successful. We also brought in a lot of retired teachers or administrators. Even at one time I had 2 superintendents and a principal who were teaching for us down there. But these new ones, they have really taking the bull by the horns, and they're doing a bang up job for us, and I'm glad to see that, because honestly 5, 6, 7 years ago I was really worried about what we were starting to turn out as far as students in the teaching career. Obviously Illinois got to do some things and change because of the way they have the retirement set up for the new people, because there's just no way people are going to be able to teach that long and be effective, in my opinion. And I think that change is coming, and so I think that's been. As far as the current students, they have been exposed to so many different things than what it was when I was growing up, or even my kids were growing up. As far as what's available to them, and I think there's good and bad to that. I think a lot of this, as far as on the technology side, with kids having tablets or whatever in their hands from the time they're 1 year to 2 years old, I'm not sure that that's a good thing, in my opinion. I think going back to that socialization and stuff, that's where you start to develop that of not having that human interaction. You're interacting with technology, and then it goes back to where we're going as far as down that road with AI and those types of things. And so on that notion, but what excites me is because they have so many different ideas than I have. Now, I'm not saying I agree or think they're all good, but they're also very open to being a lot more creative than probably what I was. And I think that's how people who are creative is how things change, and you go back when you were talking about sitting down at the table and your mom quizzing you on this. Well, I got home, we had flashcards, and I know this, when I got off the bus at 4 o'clock, 4 to 4:30, I had to get my homework done if I wanted to go play, if I wanted to go do that. And the biggest thing I wanted to do was go outside and play basketball or do that before I do my chores, It's a different world.
It is.
And so that's the things, but I think the creative side of kids today is what excites me, because I think that they have a lot more knowledge about that than I would have ever been exposed to.
Yeah, I get a sense, at least for my kids, because I got seniors as well, twins, and then of course my 26-year-old is. They are a little more plugged in socially, social justice wise, anyway. Not necessarily socially, but social justice wise. And so there's some things that are different that I never thought about, and I grew up in the 60s where civil rights was blooming and Vietnam War was going on. So it was pretty politically charged, but I didn't have those thoughts that kids have today. So, last question. If you could leave your last Goreville graduating class with one lasting message, whether it's from the superintendent's office or from mid-court, what would that message be?
Don't be afraid to achieve your dreams. and don't take anything for granted. You're not guaranteed anything besides what you have today. And a lot of times we look at, we push things down the road. I mean, I'm terrible about it. I have a to-do list, and the easiest thing to do is go in on the due date and move it to the next day. Because if it's not pressing, and I mean, I've known since I was younger, I'm a pretty good procrastinator. I'll get it done, but if it's not absolutely pressing on me, I mean, I may think about it. It's just like today. I'm like, I got that to do. I did about half of it, and then I said, I'll do the other half after a board meeting tonight. And then I'll get home, and I'm like, well, I can probably do that first thing in the morning. But I think too often we take things for granted, and a lot of times we strap ourselves down and forget what dream we're trying to change, and we don't also always necessarily know that path. My 18-year-old self would have never predicted I was going to be a superintendent. My 18-year-old self would have never predicted at that time that I'd been a principal. But my 50-year-old self, looking back at my 18-year-old self, knew that was in that person. They just didn't know about it. And so while they don't have that perspective, seeking that sage old advice from people who do is probably what has benefited me more than anything. Having those conversations with people that I grew to know, grew to trust, and grew to understand were giving me good advice, and I needed to take it, was how I broke through the gates that were in front of me, that I put up there, not somebody else.
That's great advice. Well, my friend, anything you want to cover that we haven't?
No, I appreciate it. Privilege. I think I'm back here maybe next month to officiate another game. So back here tomorrow morning for Jamf and Vocational. So
Well, I'm sure we'll see you from time to time often. Thank you for coming in.
No,
appreciate you. Everything you do is important, and I appreciate the partnership that we have and the relationship that we've developed over the last 5 years. It's important to me and the college, and thank you for everything you do. And for everyone out that might be watching this, please feel free to email us questions. John and I communicate fairly frequently, and if there's something that comes up, I can shoot it his way and we can get back to you. With that, let me just say we're looking at a holiday season popping up. I hope everyone spends some time with their families, recharges, and has some positive stuff. Everybody needs some positive spirit, especially in this time of year. So congratulations, John, with your new career at Goreville, but we appreciate you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taylor.
And that's what we have for today. Thank you, everybody, for paying attention this far. Take care.